The briefing is in relation to developments in the human settlement sector and the work that we've been doing towards the provision of sustainable human settlements. The Minister is here with us, the Honorable Mmamoloko Kubayi. She doesn't need any introduction. I think all of us are quite familiar with her. We also have the DG of Human Settlements, Dr. Alec Muyemi. We have also next to him the Deputy Chairperson of the Office of the Disclosure, Dr. Chifiwa Mpingalele. And then we also are joined here by the Chairperson of the NHFC, Mr. Dr. Mr. I'm so sorry to do that to you. So we are also joined by the Chairperson of the NHFC, Mr. Litando Vutula, and we also have DDGs in our midst from respective units who are responsible for in fact, the one element that they're responsible, I have the DDG of Corporate. She's the acting DDG of Corporate Service. It's Ms. Matupi. 2C, we have the DDG, Strategy, Research and Policy, Dr. Nanamhlongo, and Entities Oversight and IGR, Dr. DDG, Ms. Cindy Siwangongo. She's not here yet. She has been informing us that she will be present, so she is on her way. Thank you so much. I'm not going to waste any more time. After the briefing, Minister is going to do the presentation, following which we are going to open the platform for questions. You can ask your questions via also the social media number that has been provided to you. It's a WhatsApp line, so colleagues would have that already. And then we'll then take it from there. Thank you so much. I'm going to ask the Minister to come through and do the presentation. Thanks.
Good morning, everyone. I don't think this, this synchronized, okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Let me take this opportunity to greet the Deputy Chair of the Office of Disclosure, which is one of the boards that are working on behalf of the department, work in line with the banks to be able to receive disclosures on home loans that have been granted to South Africans. Greet the National Housing Finance Corporation Chairperson, Mr. Vutula. You'd know in terms of our interventions in terms of the gap market, would be one of the people that assist me today in the media briefing, and as well the Director General of the Department of Human Settlements, Dr. Muyemi, who is with me together with the DDGs in the department and the advisors to the Minister. We decided to do it in a presentation form to show you what we are concerned about, what we are doing. Maybe just to explain, sometimes South Africans know us only about dealing with informal settlements and also about the RDPs, the BNGs. We also have a mandate as the Department of Human Settlements to be able to deal with looking at adequate housing for South Africans. So the Constitution makes it a mandatory for us to ensure that all the work that we do, both in terms of legislation and policy, creates a conducive environment for every South African to have access to adequate housing. The gap market in our country is experiencing serious difficulties in terms of accessing houses. Will also be not only your middle class, but also your working class, lower level employees in the country. The factors that drive affordability of housing include high interest rate, resulting in high cost of living, limited access to financing, higher property prices, higher level of indebtedness, and limited supply of affordable houses. And the interest here, you'd remember when the President opened Parliament as the beginning of, as the 7th administration started, he placed one of the priorities in terms of affordable housing, therefore mandating us as the department to pay attention and drive this area aggressively. In this briefing, we'll present our analysis of the information submitted to the Office of the Disclosure by the financial institutions and what it shows about the affordability of housing for the gap market. We will also highlight the work that we are doing in terms of collaboration between various stakeholders as part of the interventions. Just to explain, because many people would not know, Home Loan and Mortgage Disclosure Act, which you call HLAMDA, was promulgated in 2000, and the Act intends to compel financial institutions to disclose information about the lending activities and practices in the home loan market. So everybody who's trying to buy a house and they are applying for a home loan, banks currently needs to be able to disclose to us who they've given the bonds to and the categories and the amounts that they've provided. The information is disclosed to the Office of Disclosure through a secretariat, which is within the Department of Human Settlement. The information submitted to the Office of Disclosure is mortgages, pension-based lending, unsecured lending for home loans, home loans and use purpose only. In the past, it had only been possible to ascertain the number of home loans granted by financial institutions, but not those home loans applications which have been declined and the reasons why. This trend highlights the performance of financial institutions and help us to establish the home loan lending pattern and practices of financial institutions within the reporting period, but also to understand in terms of South Africans how many remain without access to opportunities of housing. When you look at the slide here, it shows you that between 2018 and 2022, around 6 million mortgages and home loan applications were received by the banks and processed. Out of this, and out of the 6 million, total of that have been approved, actually that have been received, 2 million comes from what we call previously advantaged persons, with just over a million approvals. Applications from historically disadvantaged persons during this period was 4 million applications. Sorry now. Those presentations. Okay. It's 2.4 million approvals out of those 4 million. So you can see just below. So these are previously disadvantaged communities. The rejection rate of home loans application has also remained high, averaging around 68%. These are people who are trying to get a house. They apply, they are rejected in South Africa. So they are earning a salary. They are willing to have a house. They are willing to have a bond. They are willing to pay for it, but it's not easy for them to get it. And that's the message today and what we are trying to communicate. However, we remain concerned. So this is about almost around 3 million that we're talking about. And just to elaborate, our concern here is the people who actually went and applied. So there will be those people who go online, use online apps, put an application and then it rejects, they never go. Or they test their affordability in terms of affordability on app. And then when it tells them that you don't afford, then they just don't apply anymore. There are those who walk into a branch, ask for information to some looking for a house, and therefore they tell them how much do you earn, they show their pay slip. And once they show their pay slip, they are told, no, you can't have a home loan, they don't apply. So we believe that there's more in terms of South African beyond the 3 million that are trying to have access to a house and they are not able to get it. And then other reasons that, and when we interact through the Office of Disclosure with financial institutions as they disclose, why are people being declined? Reasons are including bad credit record, lack of affordability. Now we'll show you in terms of the slides and the graphs of what we are seeing. So mortgage approvals for lower, medium income bands. This is between 0, but many of them who are actually 3.5. So remember, in terms of the BNG, you apply below 3,500, you'll qualify. If you are earning above, then you need to go and apply for a home loan. Now, when you look at the graph, the Office of Disclosure Analysis for the past 5 years shows a concerning trend of affordability of housing for the gap. The decline in approvals in the gap market is quite significant. So when you look between 2023 and 2024, you see a sharp decline in terms of people who are being approved in the market in terms of being able to have say, shelter above their head, which is secured, which is what is decent. This indicates the access to mortgage financing for the gap market is becoming increasingly difficult in the country. Now, when you look at the next slide, Let me see the graph there. Now, this one's HDP, historically disadvantaged persons. The total number of applications over 5 years are about 4 million, valued at 2 trillion rand. The number has been on an increase over the years, although it slowed down in 2020 because of COVID. So the trend there, you'll see, it does speak to what we see in terms of our middle class in the country, that would have seen number of people increasing. But despite the increase there, you still see quite a number of previously disadvantaged individuals being not able to access a house. Now, when we look at the slide, okay, let me go back, I just moved quickly. When you look at the slide, the approval versus the declining applications. So when you look at that slide, the red becomes declining, the approvals becomes the blue one that you see there. Now, just in 2022, you'd see that the declining would be at the value, what we can call at the value of 241 billion. And also the approvals there sitting. The total number of approved application over 5 years is 49% of the total value at 1 trillion. Compared to decline, which is valued at 636 billion. So approximately half of the applications are declined, which is an indication the number of people who can access housing is still higher. So these are people who do not qualify for housing. That's why you'd find them in informal settlements. You'll find them in dilapidated buildings in inner cities. You'll find them in the backyards because they can afford, they have an income that they have in their hands, but they are not able to access mortgages. Now, we look at the previously advantaged individuals versus the historically disadvantaged individuals. Now, the number of HDPs, which is your historically disadvantaged individuals, application is twice as high as that compared to a white, for example, a black person walking into a bank versus their counterpart, which is or similar white people walking into. So we have twice higher with black people or previously disadvantaged colored and Indian communities. However, the approval rate of the previously advantaged individual will be sitting at 53%, while despite the fact that we are many of those who are previously disadvantaged, the approval rate is lower. That's another story that we are tracing and we are following to understand in detail. And some people would hear that sometimes it's because there's huge demand from the banks in terms of previously disadvantaged individuals, either surety and all those things in terms of when they want to get mortgages. But we'll get into that. In addition, the average mortgage loan approved per historically disadvantaged individuals was around 527,000 compared to a previously disadvantaged individual, which will get an approval rate or an approval of amount 2.5 million. So in terms of even inequality, in terms of that wealth, and that's what is worrying us, because we are saying we are dealing with triple challenges in the country, that of poverty, inequality, and unemployment. So when we look at this rate and what we are seeing here, it perpetuates and continues to increase in terms of our inequality in South Africa. So that's just to show in terms of the trends between 2018, 2019, 2022, 2021, and 2022. So the trends that we are seeing and we are monitoring in terms of a 5-year period. Now, we're comparing again, being in the month of women, still in August, looking at whether we do have access to shelter for women and are they getting the application. Here we can safely say a higher number of applications of 1.3 million are from women and are approved compared to 1.1 million received from men. So that's the trend that you see in terms of men versus women. So this one we can safely say it's also the trend when we look at in terms of our RDP. So you'll find that majority of the people that continue to benefit will be women and single parent households. So that's the trend that we see in terms of the areas of work and ensuring that we can continue to account for being able to still monitor and ensure that women also, as previously disadvantaged in terms of property rights, are having access to properties and they can be able to own a house. Oh, sorry. this thing slows when I move. Now, what we want to see, while we have talked about what we are seeing here, so part of the issue is to be able to say what we want to achieve and what the Act promulgates for us is the Office of Disclosure being able to assist us in actually transforming our economy, but also in terms of property ownership, because it's one of the critical areas in terms of economic development and economic growth, to ensure that previously disadvantaged individuals are able to have access to properties, but also have property ownership. So, and also one of the areas should be able to assist us to be able to ensure that we transform spatial development in our country, but also ensure that we have integrated human settlements. Currently, the information that is here, and I need to say that what we believe and what we are seeing here, we still believe that it's an inaccurate picture, or it's still missing. We do think that we have a sense of belief, or we believe that the situation is even worse than what we are seeing, because currently the banks have to disclose voluntarily. And one of the issues that we are looking at with the review of the white paper and the legislation is to make it compulsory for disclosure. We know that the banks don't think that it is necessary, but we do believe that we have a course to make in terms of forcing them to disclose when they have declined an application and the reasons why they've declined that application. Because we want to deal away, sometimes they are myths, sometimes it's people's realities, where people say to us, I worked with a partner that, or a same person, same background, we are same, but we have been racially profiled. So want to deal with such, even if they are myths or allegations. Once we compel everybody to disclose, we do believe that the process must be transparent and ensure that we can achieve our objective. So that's what we want to utilize. And we do believe that data is important, and that's why this information is important, even in ensuring that we are able to make the right decisions. Because if we do not have the right data, the right information, we'll not be able to make the necessary intervention in terms of the markets. We do believe that this is an example of what it shows as a market failure. And we've got to be able to intervene in the market to be able to address the issue of affordable housing. Yes, there are people who believe that we must allow the market to perform, but this is one of the incidences and examples that shows a market failure that needs to be intervened. And we do believe that as government, based on the laws and the constitution, we have an obligation to intervene. And that's why we're calling for the review of the legislation and policies that will make it even for private sector, especially our financial institutions, to be able to assist us to provide shelter for South Africans. Now, the legislative challenges that I've talked about, it's also even around the penalties, because when you look at the amount of penalty for non-disclosure and non-compliance, it's nothing to the people that we're putting the penalty to. So we'd want to have heavy penalties so that people are forced to comply. Because if you are going to ask a bank to pay 100,000 for a non-disclosure, it's nothing. In terms of their revenue, they don't feel the pinch, they don't feel the impact. So one of the issues that we want to do is to increase the penalties so that disclosures are done. But this is in the interest of South Africans who are trying to have a shelter above their head. Now, what is it that we are doing as South Africans? So while we are dealing as government, while we are dealing with the private sector interventions, and what we would want to see there, it's also from government point of view, we've got what we have as the department has recognized the gap, and therefore we are doing our bit in terms of ensuring that those who are earning between 3,501 rand and 22,000 a month qualify for mortgage financing, not fully subsidized houses are also catered for. Accordingly, the department is forging ahead to implement several interventions to redress in terms of this market. This includes the first home financing, as I announced, the chair of NHFC, who is here with us, social housing in the shrub, which is a rental option, rapid land release program to encourage people to build their homes, and also develop a policy to encourage employers to provide housing to their employees, as well as housing access for government employees through government employee housing scheme. Cabinet has asked us to work together with DPSA and Department of National Treasury so that we can be able to respond to government employees in terms of their housing. I get my own employees in the department who say, I'm minister, I go with you to open houses to hand over keys, but I do not have a house, I do not qualify. These are the missing middle that we need to respond to, and that's why this program is critical. But we are saying to other private sector players who have a role to be able to provide support to your employees to be able to afford a shelter. And that's part of what we want to do as part of providing solution. So First Home Financing and partners, since 2023, First Home Financing has been providing grants for non-mortgage products. For example, a person has a land in the village they want to build, they're given a subsidy so that they can be able to build. So since April 2024, we've been able to provide that level of support, especially in terms of, you look in rural areas, for example, KwaZulu-Natal, but also we are seeing Gauteng and Limpopo increasing. We'd like to see the increase across the country so that we support. There are limited funds from what we have as a state to be able to provide these grants, and that's why one of the issues that we are starting to work with, it's around partnership. And the chair, when he answers questions, he'll go into the detail around the work that we are doing. Our non-mortgage housing program has also been warmly welcomed by traditional leaders, because if you know, as you know, in communities where people have permission to occupy and have no title deeds, it will be difficult for them to build for themselves. So we're working together. The team has been doing roadshows. We've met with the National House of Traditional Leaders to be able to explain what programs we have and how we can partner so that they are also able to play a role. So this becomes one of the issues that we are saying we must be inclusive in how we provide, not only for those who are in urban areas, but also in the rural areas. Now, the other program that we have done, or the product that has been done, NHFC recently has launched a project with Cash Build and Capitec, what we call Zakhele Khaya initiatives. This is in partnership, and this is why seeing it as the first step of a strategic partnership. We want to expand beyond just Capitec and Cash Build, where people are able to build for themselves, get material, get a voucher, get support, and go and build. But we are also wanting to ensure that other private sector, we've called on the mining sector to come on board and partner with us through NHFC so that we can be able to build for mining communities, those who are working in the mining sector. We've called on various others, hospitality sector in the tourism space, where they have communities where they are staying and their workers. For example, there's nothing stopping Tourism South Africa to work together with us to build homes for those and subsidize, and we work together in partnership. For example, people are working in Kruger National Park, their employees, they must worry where their employees stay when they leave work from Kruger National Park, as an example. So those are the partnerships that we want to go into, as we're starting with Cash Build and Capitec with Zakhele Khaya customers who are applying for First Home Financing subsidies. And we are open for that so that we can expand, and various discussions are happening with various private sector in this area. Now, as I move out of this, I thought it's important for me not to leave the podium without talking about what South Africans are worried about. You would have seen somebody has been circulating and tagged me on social media about the issues. I think it's a video of Kweniguna where it shows that there are some people who have gone back to be able to sell the houses, the RDP houses, syndicates and all that. And we have been able to say to South Africans, we went to MINMEC, we acknowledge that this is an area that we must pay attention to, because we have to worry about so many houses that have been built. Many people still say that they are looking for an RDP. And the question says, who is in our RDPs? And that's why we took this decision. In the coming months, once we have done the analysis, we'll come back to you. But our approach here, I have asked the legal team in the department to work together with legal firms, together with forensic investigation, to go and do a proper analysis across all our assets. We've committed to the Auditor General and everybody else that, and one of the proposals in our white paper talks about asset register and asset management in terms of the houses that we have. Now, the challenge here is that we have people, we have given them the RDPs, and we find it when we issue title deeds. Many of the title deeds remain sitting, not being issued because either the person has been deceased, there's a fight in the house, but two, you find that some of the houses were sold before 8 years has been lapsed in violation with our act, but also you find that others have sold the houses, and this is where you find that also the issue around people who are saying to us there are foreign nationals in these houses. So what we have taken as a decision is that we are going to do, because it needs legal firm and forensic. For example, if it's a syndicate that is operating, you want the ability to be able to determine this is a syndicate that is operating, but they must have the ability themselves to be able to evict, issue lawyers. That's why we want the lawyers to be able to evict the people who are there, but also assist us in terms of prosecutions, because we believe that we can't go on like this. We initially thought that we'll do the operation Ziveze, where you go into communities, utilize, for example, in Gauteng, we thought that we'll utilize Mapanya to go and determine. But we then have determined that the problem is deeper. Because if you find it's a syndicate that has bought like 500 RDPs, they are leasing them out, or they are renting them out, or they are doing. So you need the ability to be able to prosecute, to prepare a case to go to court. And that's why we would want the ability of the forensics to do the work, but also the legal firm to prepare a case so that we do not have unwinnable cases in that. I have said to South Africans, those who have sold our houses, those who have bought our houses, they must return their houses, our houses back before we arrive. So that time has arrived. I've given them enough warning since 2021. So I hope South Africans will not call us ruthless and heartless when people are arrested, because it's the right thing to do. We have to account for state funds. So this is what we want to do in terms of the work in this area. Now, the last area I want to touch is around, just to show you, we are concerned about performance of our metros. Last week I met with 3 metros in Gauteng. We've been doing interventions in various areas. And you would have heard the Auditor General raise concerns about performance. Now, as the National Department, we transfer funds through grants to municipalities and to provinces. So in the municipality, today I'm only covering the metros. And next time we'll cover when we do the next briefing, we'll cover the provinces in terms of our Human Settlement Development Grant. In the metros, we provide the metros with USDG grant. This grant provides for your infrastructure, bulk infrastructure, water, which is water, electricity, sanitation, and roads. They also have to provide, for example, social amenities such as clinics, building of new clinics, building of community halls within this, and then they will be able to categorize various areas in terms of the issues. And then we've got what we call informal settlement upgrading grant. This is to be able to pay attention to providing basic services into informal settlements that have not been formalized, but where we formalize, we have learned to be able to do bulk upgrade and move the upgrading of those informal settlements, but also purchase land to be able to relocate. Now, part of our concern over time is the performance of the municipalities around these grants. As you see the picture, as we close the financial year, many of the municipalities were not able to finish their grants, but also some of the concerns that we have, for example, over time, we had a meeting with the mayors in Gauteng. Only Mayor of Tshwane didn't attend, the MMC attended, but the 2 mayors attended in terms of the metros. Johannesburg, the new mayor in Johannesburg, the new mayor in Ekurhuleni, and Tshwane was represented by the MMC, unfortunately not the mayor. And we raised our concerns around performance. If you look here in the slide, you'll see, when we compare in terms of the USDG spending and ISUP spending. I mean, for example, if you look at Johannesburg, Johannesburg in ISUP have gone to 94. We always say it has to be 95. But you look at Buffalo City sitting at 77, Nelson Mandela Bay at 86%, but worse off is Mangaung in terms of informal settlement upgrading, which we are concerned. We'll be having an urgent meeting with them as well to be able to turn around the situation there, send an implementation team to be able to look at it. But when you look in terms of our USDG, you'd find that Johannesburg spends 66% here in terms of the upgrading. These are bulk, these are roads, these are clinics. And when we looked here, you find that as we drill down to understand what is the problem, you find that the political instability in Johannesburg has affected. So administration will prepare documents, will prepare projects because they have to be approved by council. You find those documents don't make them in time to be able to go for approvals, and therefore projects don't start in time. So we have agreed with the 3 metros that we are not going to fold our arms and not intervene. We are going to go in. Ekurhuleni, one of our concerns was that our money was spent wrongly. For example, in one of the areas we picked up and we said to the mayor, he must go back and give us an explanation. We understand that it was not his, it's a legacy, but he has to give us an explanation together with the administration. There, one of the concerns that we have, for example, you find that the USDG grant is used for renovations of building, which is not supposed to be. So we've called for that to be corrected, and therefore pay attention to be able to start correcting those issues. We have agreed that in Ekurhuleni, like we did in Nelson Mandela Bay, we are going to establish a war room that is having national, province, and local. The municipality will have their team. MEC Motara in the province will have her team. We'll send our team, and it will be chaired by the national team, so that we can be able to turn around the situation, spending correctly, because we are not only looking at the spending. For example, if you look at eThekwini spends 100%, but value for money is not there. So that's part of what we worry about. So we have agreed even here with MEC Duma that we are going to go into eThekwini. We had to postpone our meeting there to be able to start intervening and ensuring that there's value for money, but there's spending. We can't continue to have grants that are unspent in the portfolio while people continue not to have access to water, access to toilets, access to electricity, but also not having roads, not having clinics, when the grants provide for that in their communities, especially in the 8 metros. There is no excuse why we send money back. So we do believe that, and we had a meeting at the beginning of the financial year so that we can change the situation. So in conclusion, I just want to highlight these are the issues that we are bringing to the attention, and maybe just also saying the human settlement, but that's why we are called human settlements. We are beyond just building of RDP houses and also responding to informal settlements, but more importantly, to ensuring that South Africans have access to adequate housing and responding even to the missing middle and gap market. And we do believe that all of us have to work together, both private and public. We have to work together to ensure that we build a better South Africa. And that's our call for our private sector colleagues to come on board and work with us to ensure that we can be able to turn the situation around, for the financial sector to come on board and play a part so that we can ensure that South Africans are able to have access to affordable home loans, but also in terms of having a shelter over their head. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for that, Minister. It was quite comprehensive. I hope that colleagues, you are ready with your questions, because I'm going to invite you for questions now. I'm going to start inside as we welcome both Dr. Moyebi and the other delegations to come back to the podium, to the stage. So I'm going to now request that we pose our questions. I'm going to start here internally in this room, and then we are going to now move to the online platform. I think Obatabile will assist us with that. A round of questions, maybe we'll start with about, by show of hands. Question number 1. Do we have a question 2? So that we can take all and then move. You can go, my sister. Please press that red button, yes.
Good morning, Minister, and everyone on the panel. My name is
It's not audible.
Let me try the other one. Is this one better?
Yes.
Just speak a bit higher as well.
Good morning.
Thank you.
My name is Dalo Tukwana from Bloomberg News. My question is around some of the interventions that you are currently undertaking in addressing the legacy of apartheid spatial planning. Your colleague, the Deputy Minister of Finance, last week said that there would be a voucher system that you would be implementing where people get vouchers and they would you would match them with the developer. Just broadly, are you able to explain?
We can't hear.
Okay, the question is about an announcement that was made by the Minister of Social Development around apartheid spatial. Yes. Just repeat your question.
No. Deputy Minister of Finance.
Deputy Minister of Finance.
Yeah. David Masondo.
Please use your conference voice. You're just having a problem with the audio. Yeah, we're battling to hear you this end. Continue with the mic. Just.
Okay.
Sorry,
so,
Dan.
so the Deputy Finance Minister last week was talking about a voucher system where a recipient would get a voucher and they would be matched with a developer, and they would then sort of choose where to go and follow, like choose to go to a place that's closer to economic opportunities, because previously the housing system just, you were allocated a house in whatever location without a full consideration of how many economic opportunities there would be around you. So I just wanted to find out just broadly how that system would work and how deeply you've done the work in trying to find out what the need is and how many of these vouchers you would be actually giving out and maybe some of the costs involved.
Okay, thanks, Dando. I'll take the next question. You can go, sis.
Doza from Museum Africa. Just a question around as we're pushing to get more people in the property sector. Are we also looking at the cost of service deliveries for where those affordable housings are set up so that the properties don't lose value because of service delivery affordability issues within that market?
Thank you for that. Is there another question so that I can allow Minister to respond? There isn't. Oh, there is. Stubo?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, just speak loudly, please. Use your conference voice.
Regarding interventions on, the gap, but the one that actually is below 3.5 threshold, because I heard the minister say that they're going to try to accommodate those that are earning between 3.5 and 22,000. What happens to your garden boys and your kitchen girls who are working in, like, for instance, Pretoria East, and there's a plastic view where they're residing because it's close to their employment?
Okay, thanks, Timo. Okay, I have another follow-up from...
I'd just like to add,
Okay.
If we do have those figures, what are the penalties currently for banks, for not, and what penalty are we looking for failing to disclose the information as requested by the department?
Okay, thank you so much. But Tabila, I think maybe let's move to the online so that we are able to take all those questions at once.
We have two questions. The first question is from Yonele Otana from Ngobo FM. What are the department interventions regarding the flood that left people homeless in Eastern Cape and KwaZulu-Natal? The second question is from Okushe, representing Cape Times. On August 9, the ministry announced that an emergency housing team was dispatched to Swartland municipality for intervention following the collapse of the Riverlands Dam. More than 100 affected residents are still housed at two accommodations. Please provide an update about the rebuilding and repairs of the intervention. At what stage are the plans for repairing homes that were partially destroyed and rebuilt for those destitute?
Thank you for that. There's another one from Tando Mayeko from Business Day. It reads, when does the department envision the legislative changes aimed at strengthening the Office of Disclosure to be enacted? So that was our last question from online. Minister, can I please invite you to the podium?
Let's start with the Deputy Chair of Office of Disclosure.
Okay. We are going to have the Deputy Chair from the Office of Disclosure just to outline some of the areas that have been asked. Thanks.
Please,
can come this side.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Maybe I will start by highlighting some of the issues that we have been undertaking with the financial institution, especially in terms of changing to amend, in fact, some of the issues that we thought there were impediments to providing human settlement to our people, especially from the banking point of view. Some of the issues that we have been doing recently, in fact, since the beginning of this year, was to engage the bank mostly around the issues of reporting, which according to our analysis, it's a bit outdated, and therefore it no longer fits the purpose and no longer really address the issues that human settlement of today should be able to render to the citizens, given many challenges that we have been facing. Some of the issues maybe that I need to outline, it was mostly the issues on which the minister has already indicated around the gender-based approval loans, and also white versus blacks approval in terms of even interest rates that are even offered to either historically disadvantaged and historically disadvantaged individuals. Because this we have identified as issues that are indeed impeding the economic transformation, given the significance that human settlement has in our economy. The other issues that I needed to also highlight, which I thought needed to also be reflected, was the issues around the penalties. Unfortunately, at this point in time, we cannot give you the exact figure, since this is currently a process that we are debating, and we should be in a position to give you that once the amendment has been finalized. So we will not want to just give you the figure while other stakeholders have not really engaged with us and finalized the penalties. But be assured that it will not be 100,000 as it stands, because at this point in time, we, according to the reports that we have seen, mostly from the financial institutions, you mostly find lots of nil reports, not because there are no reports, but because there are no consequences. And therefore, if we introduce penalties that are that will be able to speak to the challenges that we are currently facing, at least there will be some level of seriousness from the side of the financial institution to start reporting. And another issue that we also want to bring to attention, currently the legislature, it allows the financial institutions to voluntarily report, and the new proposed amendments is to make sure that this becomes compulsory, so that no one has got a loophole to really not report on issues that affects South Africa's economic transformation. I think those are the only issues that I thought we need to bring to your attention. I think the issue of integrated, I think there was a question around the cost of service delivery affordability, and where, so that I think is the minister's one. Thanks a lot.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Mpingalele. We are going to now invite Mr. Vutula to the podium to take some of the questions you've asked. If there's any more questions in there, please just, in the meantime, send them on the WhatsApp so that you are able to provide the feedback that you require. Thanks.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Minister. Maybe just from an NHFC perspective, there's the issue that was raised around affordability. So there's a lot that we're doing around affordability. I think, as the Minister said earlier on, I mean, part of what we are doing around first home finance, I mean, the whole purpose there is to ensure that people between 3.5 and 22,000, they can actually get a subsidy. And then hopefully then get the mortgage from the banks. And I think we're obviously quite excited about the fact that, you know, there will be this disclosure, because it is necessary, because government is putting in, I think, a lot in terms of the subsidy through first home finance. But also just to say around the issue of affordability, and also to bring in, I think, more previously disadvantaged people, I think, into the sector. We are working on an incubator program just to make sure that we can bring in more people who can actually not just be recipients of houses, but also can actually do business, I think, in this sector, because there's lots of opportunities. And I think there was also an issue around people who are possibly earning less than 3,500. We do want to say that our rental program, particularly around social housing, and especially in the inner cities, we have, I think, in the last 20 years been in fact, I must say this, I think through the leadership of the minister here, the reality is that, we are the biggest provider of social housing finance in this country. That also includes inner city. So we are looking at that, and certainly through some of the institutions that we have founded, I think as NHFC, like for example, the Trust for Urban Housing Finance, which operates in the inner cities. And the intention there is to bring people into the inner city so that they are closer to their working environments. So I think those were the issues I think that we can respond to as NHFC. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you so much. I'm going to now invite the DG of the Department of Human Settlements, Dr. Alec Muemi, to give some of the responses that you've requested. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Thank you, and good afternoon to everybody, and thanks to the Minister. Just to respond to the issues raised pertaining to the natural disasters that occurred and with partially damaged properties and our response thereto. But first to indicate a bit of context that as natural disasters occur, we as the department, and together this being a concurrent mandate, which we share with municipalities as well as provinces, the idea really is that we should help restore the lives of those who are impacted by the natural disasters and other declared disasters such as fires, and where properties get damaged in this regard and lost. Our job is to actually try and bring them back to where they would have been had the natural disaster or the loss of property not have occurred. Given that reality, we realized from early on that there were challenges. Many of the restoration work was not being done adequately, and we also realized that the response time it took for municipalities as well as provinces to respond to these disasters was inadequate. We consulted widely within government itself, with our stakeholders, provinces, municipalities, and also other respective government departments. We also tabled this before Cabinet and briefed Cabinet adequately. Ultimately, even with the support of the Treasury, it was supported that we actually should centralize the operations of response to disasters in the human settlement space. The new dispensation from which we centralized this was with effect from 1 April 2023, in which all the funding was put in one kitty with the viewpoint of us responding immediately. We immediately set ourselves targets to respond to, we categorized the type of disasters, and where there has been a complete loss of property, we had set ourselves to respond and be on the ground within the first 24 hours. And often even with the first of our responses happening within between 48 to 72 hours of having confirmed beneficiaries. Having said that, we are aware about the legacy issues of the old order dispensation, in which many of the, or some of the interventions that provinces and municipalities may have made may have been inadequate, and where the non-response at that time may have occurred. We are aware about that legacy. We are attending to it as and when we have been able to look at the business plans of provinces. We have ring-fenced and insisted on them to respond to these disasters that had not been attended to previously. But those with effect from 1 April 2023 in the new dispensation, we had been responding to them and responding adequately to them. Our response is in three ways. First, within the first aftermath of the disaster having occurred, we provide what we call a TEA, a temporary emergency accommodation. Typically, even in some instances of recent in Nelson Mandela Bay, we even provided cheaper hotel accommodation opportunities for those that are most vulnerable, and women with newborn babies, older persons, and vulnerable children, and so on. and we provide that as an immediate response. And we then ensure and strive to make sure that we provide what we call a temporary residential unit, a TRU. And that one, we provide it. You are going to stay in it for a duration while we provide you with a permanent solution, being a provision of an RDP house where you qualify. So we provide these three things, a temporary emergency accommodation, a temporary residential unit, and then we provide ultimately an RDP house as a permanent arrangement for you to stay in. So given that, we are already exploring many ways. Minister has pushed us to say we must look at alternative building technologies, and we must look at how we stretch the rent and we ensure that we reach many beneficiaries than just one, because if you can imagine, if we are paying 3 times, as we are doing currently, for a temporary emergency accommodation and for a TRU and ultimately for the RDP house again. But if we were to look into our policy framework around our intervention on the temporary residential unit, and if we were to build what will become acceptable to our people as a permanent solution that can be built almost immediately, then we don't have to build an RDP house and also a temporary residential unit for the same person. We simply can build a permanent solution for a person once off, and it will mean our response times are much more faster and much more greater and quicker. To be specific to those 2 questions that have come across about our response in KZN as well as Eastern Cape, we think that we have responded adequately this far. We have provided, and the contractors for TRUs are on the ground both in KZN as well as in the Eastern Cape, and we are also looking at further beneficiary management for purposes of a permanent solution. So there our response has been quite adequate, and we are glad to say so. And on the one of Swartland, our team did go on the ground, and having gone there, we had also done the beneficiary management process, and our processes with the province are underway for an adequate response, having due consideration to what I said, the legacy issues that we are not by law allowed to spend current funding on the older order type of disasters. And it's a matter that even at a functional group with the National Treasury, we had raised that a permanent solution be found to all what is outstanding from the old order dispensation before the funds were centralized under National Department. Thank you.
Thanks, DG. Maybe let me just conclude. I don't know if there's still other questions, but just to conclude on this one. Quickly, maybe let me start with the issue raised by Deputy Minister of Finance. They've not engaged us as the policy holder and the implementing. We'll look at what they are saying. We've engaged with the team that has been working with finance team, the Harvard business team. Previously, there were issues I was concerned about their approach, even their understanding of the legacy of apartheid in South Africa in the manner that they were defining what needs to be done. I met them, I think, 2 or 3 times, where I gave them feedback and my concerns around those issues. For example, if you are to say somebody must get a voucher in the inner city to build, where will they build? So those are the realities. If we want, for example, an employee of government to come and build in the inner city, there isn't land availability. All of us know the metro's biggest challenge across the country in where the opportunities for work is land availability. And that's why part of the issue, we went and worked together with Public Works. We established a team to be able to look at the buildings that exist within the inner cities. Some are owned by municipalities, by the way, that are refusing to give. We'll have to continue nudge, because Constitution says that we can, what would the word call, usurp the powers of the municipalities based on the Constitution. So we've got to allow them to do what they can do in local sphere. For example, we're observing what is happening in Johannesburg, and we'll continue to engage them, because there are about 148 buildings that have been assessed in Johannesburg that are under JPC, that we believe they can be repurposed and be made social housing. So it's those things that we'll continue to work with. What we think will be interventions, for example, is different segment market intervention. So not one size fits all. For example, when we deal with disasters, in KwaZulu-Natal, Pietermaritzburg, we were able to provide vouchers for those who wanted to fix their roofs. So it's easier that way. If you are to provide, because you still have to do accountability in terms of Auditor General and for the funds that you use. But we are happy that National Treasury is actually starting to pay attention to the challenges that we have, because some of the difficulties previously has been them. And I'm happy they have been quite open lately and they are willing to support us. So with what Deputy Minister Masonde is saying, we will be approaching him both in his capacity as Deputy Minister of Finance but Chair of PIC, where we think those funds can assist our developers to be able to build affordable housing. I know my Chair of NSHFC will be very happy to work with PIC to have availability of capital funds to be able to repurpose buildings in inner cities available for our citizens. So that is a welcome. I did tell him that we need to have a meeting ASAP, myself and him, together with the chair of GPF, actually, Tondo Mokhanjan, that would want to work with them, partner with them in accessing their capital funding for us to be able to support our developers, to be able to build, but also for other support for our own South Africans, especially those who work for government, to be able to utilize their money. So the issue of cost of service delivery, look, it's various issues. Municipalities, and I'm assuming this, you're talking about services that we have to pay. One of the issues that we have to take into consideration, for example, we have a building that HDA has in the city of Cape Town, Sea Point. And we're saying if we are to put, for example, we are battling with that, how we're going to cross-subsidize the low-incomers, because just on services and rates and taxes are more than even what the person can afford. So those are the realities, and that's why we have to come in and we are talking about an intervention in the market, because if you allow the market to run on its own, it's not going to be. So the issue, that's why the conversation that Dr. Mmamoloko is talking about in terms of affordability of electricity, it's one of the issues that we believe can be able to assist. But if you are able to have, for example, how we do it with social housing, because with social housing, we are able to build buildings and it's subsidized for people to be able to afford rent because we come in as government. But there's limited, that's what we want to do, the partnership, bring in your PICs and others to be able to assist us to make more stocks available, what we call stock in terms of the market available. So it will be, but the conversation continues. We want to encourage people, because sometimes people say it's too much expensive, we can't afford. We want to encourage people to continue to pay services while we're looking at various areas of interventions. Various municipalities actually, even on social housing, have come in to provide subsidy. I know, for example, we engaged City of Cape Town. They did, in terms of social housing, come in and reduce the amount. So we continue to have conversation. Johannesburg started to have that conversation. We just need to follow up and ensure that it can be done and implemented. So that's one of the issues. I think the chair responded to what we call low-income earners, domestic workers market. These are the ones that we, for example, we've pushed for them to have minimum wage income. But in terms of affordability is one of the challenges. One of the issues that we're starting to pay attention to, and we are finalizing our white paper, is the review of the amount, 3,500. Dr. Mhlongo is here, who's leading that process together with some of the teams in the department and Dr. Marwala. And one of the issues that what is being proposed is to change the 3,500 upwards, either 5,000, 6,000, because of the cost of living and looking at the food basket that people are able to get. So that will be responded to as we pronounce and intervene in terms of our, what is it called, our review of white paper policy. And the last point around, I know Chair or Deputy Chair of Office of Disclosure was saying we will engage. We will actually get into the room, but 100,000 is far less for the penalties of the banks. We will increase it to the point that we'll look at what Competition Commission is able to do with the penalties, but also we've got to do something that makes them feel the impact. So we can't continue. That's why we are acknowledging that 100,000 is just not making anything in terms of non-compliance. So once we finalize the white paper, we'll announce the amounts and the nature of penalties that we would want to see, just not only in terms of figures, but what penalties do we want to see that will have an impact in terms of the financial sector to be able to come onto the party. Thank you very much.
Thanks for that, Minister, for the responses. Colleagues, I don't know if there's any more questions because we are going to bring it to a close if there isn't any more questions. I know that Ubatabile is saying that there isn't anything online, and I'm sure there's nothing in the room. Okay. If there's nothing else, colleagues, I'm going to wrap it up. Okay. I'm going to wrap it up for us. Thank you so much for having us and for attending this media briefing. It was quite important. I'm hoping that colleagues are going to walk away here with some very extravagant front pages and online digital stories that they're going to report on our sector. We are available for any questions. If you need anything, just shout. And then, ma'am, they were requesting that we have a photo op.
What?
Thank you so much, colleagues. They're requesting that we have a photo op.
Okay, I have a meeting at 1.
Sizenza la? Okay. Bacela khona la.